Hello and welcome to Runtime HRMS. In this video, we will be talking about the workflows. Workflows are a very powerful feature of Runtime HRMS which can be used to automate any kind of approvals or step-based process in your company. So to access workflow, first go to the setup page and you will find the workflow icon over here. Open the workflows page and you will find the workflows that you have defined. So for this video we will be creating a new workflow and we will see how it will work from start to end. So let's start with creating a new workflow. Click on add and let's call it a claim reimbursement workflow. So basically this workflow is something that employees will be submitting when they are traveling, when they are out of city or within city and they want to submit a claim. So whatever expenses they have beared during the travel, they will submit it and it will come to the company, to the designated authority who will be approving or rejecting the claim based on the submission. So we have added the workflow. That's the first step. So claim reimbursement workflow is added. Now the second step is to create the fields. Fields mean what information you want the employees to submit in the particular workflow. So for example, this is a claim reimbursement workflow. So we would want to employee to submit details like the city they have visited, the date of their visit, the attachments related to their travel ticket or hotel expenditure, anything. So let's start by creating few fields. Click on the field button and click on add field. Let's add the first field as date of travel. Now you will see that there are multiple type of fields that are available here: text, number, date, time, list and attachment. So we will look at each of these field type. Let's start with date because it's a date of travel. So we are selecting date as the field type. Now required means that this is a mandatory field and has to be filled in to submit the workflow. So we have clicked on required and save. So this first field is added. Now let's add some more fields. So if the employee is visiting a particular city, you can select city of travel and let's keep it text. So text means employee can type any value. So they can type in the city name, and again this is a required field. So let's click on required and save. Another field could be the mode of transport. So mode of transport is you want to know from the employee whether they have traveled through bus, train, flight or any other mode. So for that purpose we will select another type which is list. List will allow you to enter certain values separated by comma. So let's type by car, by bus, by train, by flight. So this will appear as a drop down selection to the employee when they submit this workflow. Again this is a required field and let's add another one, travel tickets. Now if the employee is traveling by bus or by train or by flight, they would have travel ticket which they can attach as a supporting document for their claim. Now this can be an attachment field. There is a possibility here that employee is traveling by road, so they may not have any travel ticket because they will have some petrol bill or reimbursement for the fuel expenditure. So let's not make it mandatory so that employee can still submit without attaching a travel ticket. Now let's select another field and let's put number of days. So if the employee has visited some client place or he has visited some place out of city, how many number of days has he spent over there? So for that we will select number and it can be a required field. So we have covered text, date, list and attachment. Now we can cover one more type which is time. So let's say 6 and time of leaving HQ. So when the employee leaves the HQ to start the travel, we are asking them to submit the time of their departure. And we can have more fields like that. You can add up to 20 fields in a particular workflow, and you can decide whether that would be a mandatory field or not. So I think that is sufficient for now. We have, I think, covered all the type of fields. Now let's refresh this page and see that we have defined 6 different fields. The next thing is steps. So steps are the different steps by which the workflow will pass. So first step is the employee will submit the workflow. That's a default step, so you do not need to create it. But after the employee has submitted the workflow, what should be the next step? Should the workflow go to their manager for approval, or it should go to the HR manager, or it should go to some designated person in your organization? For example, you may have one person dedicated for handling all the claim requests. So that person can be made as a responsible person when this step is covered. So now let's define few steps. So first step is, let's say, manager approval. So this means that whenever the employee submits the request, it will directly go to their manager, and if the manager rejects it, the workflow will close. But if the manager approves it, then it will move forward. So let's see what all options are available here. Send to manager, send to HR manager, send to department head, send to a selected person. So from entire organization, you can pick any person who is defined as an employee, and then this request will go to that employee. And close workflow means whenever this step arrives, the workflow request will automatically close. So we will define a few steps with these settings. Let's start with send to manager. We also have one more field, send notification. So in case you want some other person to be notified when this step is arrived, you can type in their email address. By default, when the step will go to the manager will get a email notification, as well as they will get a notification on their mobile phone. But apart from that, if you want to add any more alert, you can put that email address here. Now let's save it. That's the first step, manager approval. Now let's add another step, HR approval, and select HR manager here. Now it is important to note that whenever you are selecting HR manager or manager in any of the workflow step, make sure that the employee has a HR manager and a manager defined, because if there is no HR manager or no manager defined on employee work profile, then when this step arrives in the workflow, they will not be able to submit it for further approval, because there is no designated person to whom the request should go. So we have added 2 steps. Now let's add one more step. And let's say department head. So what it will do is, the step will first go to manager, then it will go to the HR manager, and then it will go to the department head. Now who is the department head? Whenever you create an employee record, there is an employee profile. Under the employee profile, you select a department, and each department can have a department head. So you also need to make sure that whatever departments you have in the system, they have a head defined in the setup. I will show you the department setup also in just a bit. So that's, we have created 3 steps, and let's say that after all 3 approvals are there, we need to close the workflow. So we will add the final step, and we will say closure, and we'll select close workflow. Now on closing workflow, you may want another person to be notified, so let's put that email also here. This can be any email address. It is not necessary that this email has to be for some employee which you have defined in the system. You can provide any third-party email address also. The system will simply send a notification to this email address. So all steps are defined. Let's close it and refresh our page. So we have 6 fields and 4 steps in this workflow, and this workflow is set as active. Now at any stage, if you want to deactivate a workflow, what will happen is employees will not be able to see this workflow in their request drop down, but the old request will still be maintained. However, if you delete a workflow, there should be no request submitted against it. If there are any requests submitted for a workflow, you first need to delete all the requests, then you can delete the workflow. Before that, you cannot delete the workflow. So the workflow setup is done. Now we will look at the employee submission part. So here we are on the employee self-service portal. This is exactly same as the mobile app, which is Workman. You can either use Workman to submit the workflow request, or you can also use the online portal. For ease of explanation, we are going to see how the workflow request is submitted using the online portal. I will zoom in a little bit so that you can see the things easily. So first of all, either from the mobile app or from the web portal, you need to go to the request section. Under request, you will see a workflow option. Simply click on workflow and you will see the list of all workflows. Now you can see that there are some predefined workflows which are system generated, and then you will see your own workflow. So if you remember, we have defined a claim reimbursement and there was one more miscellaneous. So you are seeing both these workflows here. So let's select claim reimbursement, which we just created, and click on continue. Now you can notice that all the fields that we have created are shown here, and whatever fields we made mandatory are marked with red sign. This particular field we did not make mandatory, so it is not showing a red sign. Now second thing is, if a field was created as a date, you can see a date picker here. If the field was a simple text, you can see the text. If the field was a drop down, you can see car, bus, train, what we selected by separating them by comma. Then this is a text, this is a file picker, so we have selected it as an attachment. Similarly, we have all different fields. So let's try to submit this workflow. Suppose I started the travel on 24th of June and I was traveling to Delhi and I was traveling by car, so I do not have a travel ticket to attach. Now my total travel duration was 3 days and I left office at around 17:15. So in the evening, 5:15 p.m. I left the office. Comments: visiting client XYZ. So these are comments which are a mandatory field. You have not created this field in the workflow, but this field will always appear. If we go back to the setup and see the fields, there is no comment field here, but it will always appear because you can capture additional information. If the employee has to mention any comments about his visit, he can put it here, and then we can submit this workflow. So you can see now the request is successfully submitted. If you go back to requests and come on workflow, there is a button for viewing the history. If you go to history, you can see that this request was submitted. This is the request number. It was submitted by you on June 28, and this is the comment that you have put in. If you click on this eye icon, you will see the details, like this was a claim reimbursement request. It was submitted by this person, which is the employee logged in, submitting date and time. Then you can see the date of travel, city of travel. This is all the information that you have filled in. If you have attached any document, you can download it using this document link, download link. Then you have activity log. So this request is now created and there is no further activity. But remember, we have created different steps in the workflow. So steps mean that now this request would have gone to the manager of this employee. If you remember, the first step is manager approval. So the request will go to the manager. Now if we open this portal, the Connect portal or the mobile app with the manager's login of this person, like whoever is the manager of this person, if we open with that login, then we will see this request in the approval section. So right now we are logged in with the same employee, so we will not see it. But if I go to approvals and click on workflow, I will see that request here for manager approval. Now in order to complete the entire process, what we can do is, instead of approving it from the manager standpoint, we can approve it as an admin also. So I go back to the setup part and let's go to requests and workflows. Here in workflow, you will see all the requests which are pending, and they may be pending with different people. So for example, this latest request that we submitted, it was submitted by Malvika and it is pending with Manmeet, who is the manager of this employee. But as an administrator, you can approve this request from here also. So let's click on this button and move to next step. Now moving to next step simply means that you are approving on behalf of the manager, and the request will move to the next step, which is HR manager. At this stage, you can also reject and close the request. So the request will short circuit here and it will not proceed further. Now as an administrator, if you want to see the details, like what employee has actually submitted in the request, all those fields and the information submitted, you can click on download details and see those details. And lastly, you have a delete request option. So you can completely delete this request, it will disappear from the system. Now whatever action you take, the employee who has submitted the request will get a notification on their mobile phone, and the update will also appear in the history when they see the workflow history. Now let's move the step to move the request to the next step. Approving as manager. So you should put the comments in such a way that when you look at the data at a later time, maybe 10 days after it or 1 month after it, then you should be able to understand why you approved it as an administrator, because it was supposed to be approved by the manager. So let's put approving as manager since Mr. Manmeet is out of town, right? So this way you can easily recall that why you approved from the admin panel. Now if I move this step to next level, it will update like the next approver is Paritosh Sharma and the step is HR approval. Now let's go to the employee portal in the request section, workflows, and see the history. The request is still there. If you click on this icon to see the details, you will see that there is one more activity in this request. Request move to next step, HR approval by administrator. So the user who is logged in on the main website is administrator, then he has moved to the next step. Now let's go back to our request page and move it further. So now I am approving as an HR manager. Again, I will type some comments so that I understand why I approved it as administrator. The request has further moved for the department head approval. Let's refresh the history here. The request moved to next step, department approval by administrator, and you can see the date and time when these actions are taken. So all the audit history is maintained so that you can easily track back what actually happened. Now you will remember that the department approval is the last step, and after it the step is closure. So if I move this request forward, it will basically close and it will no longer be an open request. So right now I am looking at open requests. If you see here and here also it is open request. If I am approving it now, moving to next step, it will become a closed request and the workflow is completed. Now if you remember, the request number 199 has disappeared from this list and other requests are showing which are still open. That is because the last step was closure, and after we approved the department head approval, it has closed. Now if you want to see that request, you can still see it. You can simply go to closed requests and search. So the latest request will show at the top, and you can see there is no current owner, no current step, because the request is already closed. Let's go back to the history which is visible to the employee, and you can see there are two updates now. Request move to next step, department approval by administrator, and final step approved by administrator, request closed. So this means the request is closed. Now at this stage, let us talk about the follow up on the request, because you can see that this is a claim reimbursement request, which means the employee has submitted certain claim and he wants a reimbursement for that. Although we did not capture a field for amount, which should be the case that total amount which the employee is requesting for reimbursement should be mentioned here. But suppose there was an amount field here and the request is finally approved. So the final approval step should be that the person who is approving the final step should put it in the payroll of the employee, so that in the next salary they will get the reimbursement. And otherwise also, if you do not pay the travel reimbursement as a part of salary and you pay it separately, then you should process the payment first and then you should approve the request, so that it is not lost, because after approving the final step the request is closed. So whatever action is necessary. In this example I have explained about claim reimbursement, but suppose there is anything else which requires an action on some employee or some head part, then that action should be taken before approving the final step. And when approving the final step, you can also mention in the comments the related details of that action. Like for example, if you are making the payment to the employee, you can mention that the amount was paid to the employee via bank transfer with transaction reference number XYZ. So that way you will have a complete detail of what action was taken, what happened in the workflow. Now this part is complete. Employee can now, if you refresh this page, the request is fully approved and all the steps are closed. So employee will know from the history that his request is processed. And from this part you can always view the status of open and closed request. On this particular page there are a couple more things that you can notice, that while searching for a particular request you can search by workflow type. Like if you select miscellaneous, only the miscellaneous category requests will appear, and if you select claim reimbursement, only the claim reimbursement requests can appear. So you can filter it that way. Then secondly, you can filter it for all requests, open request and close requests. Thereafter the third filter is request ID or employee code. So for example, this is request number 199. If you could not find the request, if there is a long list of requests and somebody is asking for a status update on a request, suppose the employee goes to his portal and he sees that his request is 199, and now you are seeing hundreds of requests here, you cannot find 199. So you can simply type 199 here and search. So if the request is there with this number, it will appear. If there is no request with that number, it will not appear. So all these filters work in common. If you select a wrong workflow and put 199, then no results will be found, because this request number does not exist in miscellaneous. It exists in claim reimbursement. Similarly, if you select open request and put 199, no results will be found, because this request is already closed. So you can select either all requests, then this request will show up, or you can say closed request and this will show up. So these all filters work together. So accordingly you can find the relevant requests. So that was it about the workflows. It is a very powerful and a very flexible feature which you can customize as per your requirement, and you can define the steps and the information that you want to capture at every step. So I hope this video will help you explore this feature and you will make use of it, and keep watching more videos for other features on Runtime HRMS. Thanks for watching. Bye.